All right. Hello, YouTube.
Hola.
We are waiting on Robinson, and as soon as his dumbass joins us from Vietnam, we will begin the actual recording of the podcast. So, for people that are watching, it's important to note that the YouTube feed that you are watching is essentially a behind the scenes video recording of what becomes the Sober Happy Hour radio podcast. It's live on YouTube, so if people want to watch, they can. Or you could just minimize us if you're a YouTube Red subscriber and listen, because it's meant to be an audio show. That's why, from a video perspective, we really don't take a lot of time making the video anything to behold. But it can be fun to watch what's going on from time to time. And the podcast is on iTunes. You can get it from any of your favorite podcast listening applications. It is also available at soberhappyhour.com if you want to download individual episodes. And every Saturday night from midnight to 2 a.m. Pacific time, you can listen to the previous week's Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast on Radio Valencia in the San Francisco Bay Area, or streaming on their website at radiovalencia.fm. The Radio Valencia antenna, if you will, is not particularly strong. It has a much further reach in the middle of the night than it does during the day because of the congestion and everything in San Francisco, but it broadcasts out of the Mission District. It is an independent radio station in San Francisco, and you can get to it by visiting 87.9 on your FM radio dial if you happen to have a radio machine. So that is what you are watching, ladies and gentlemen, the Sober Happy Hour behind the scenes broadcast. So if you're wondering what the hell you're looking at every week, that's what it is. It is not three idiots broadcasting live on YouTube. We realize that the video is not that exciting, and that's by design. We utilize YouTube, although we love our YouTube subscribers and our YouTube viewers, and we appreciate the time that you spend watching. The intention originally was we used Google Hangouts as a means to record the show so that all three of us could be in a different location. We started doing Hangouts on air when that became available, which then automatically started posting these up to our YouTube page, which we had to make in order to use Hangouts. So it just kind of happened very naturally, but it was definitely not intended to be viewed publicly. We even thought about keeping the Hangout and the Google Plus profile private so that people couldn't see our ridiculous video stream. So that is why it seems very low budget, very low production value. And because this is an audio show, this is a radio show. So please bear with us while we record video for no reason. We are waiting for Robinson. As soon as he joins the video call, we will start the recording. We play the bumper music. That's how you know the show has actually started. And then you can follow along. So if we have nothing to say for the next couple of minutes before Robinson joins, you know why. Chaz.
Yes.
Do you think that we have 2 hours worth of content to talk about the things that we were talking about tonight?
I believe that we have enough content to get a really good conversation going.
Enough content to choke a horse. There's Robinson. I always know it's him because
he's on a bike.
Hey, he looks like a lovely lady with a scarf in the wind with his hair flowing behind him.
He's got a friend on the back. Yeah.
Of course he has a friend on the back. Robinson's a pimp. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. He is a PIMP.
And he can
p.m.
hear us right now, right?
It looks
Oh,
like he can. Oh, don't get in an accident, please. Do not die
yes.
on live YouTube.
But Woodstock.
It would. I'm going to make him big.
I
There
am
he
too.
is.
I'm watching it in long.
So
That's
it
a
looks like
cool helmet.
it is a cool helmet. I bet it's not very safe, but it
Probably
is
not.
cool. And I guess he's not wearing a scarf. It's like a part of the helmet, maybe? Or maybe he had a neck injury, and it's one of those neck braces. I don't know. It looks
Hmm.
beautiful there. The weather looks
Yeah.
phenomenal. I wonder if he is in Hanoi or in Saigon. It looks like Hanoi. I'm gonna make a guess that it is Hanoi, Vietnam, but I'm probably wrong. So it looks like he's getting to where he needs to be, traveling the streets of Vietnam in his designer sunglasses with his baseball hat looking helmet, which probably could impale a human being if he were to fly off that bike and hit someone hard enough. I have no idea how he has his phone pointed at his face.
It's a
My guess is
GoPro.
if he's holding it, this is very dangerous.
Well, if he's holding it, he's got a very steady hand.
My guess is that he's like duct taped it to the front of his scooter.
Yeah. Like on a GoPro or something.
I'd say that sounds realistic. So my entire family lives on the East Coast now, and they are currently experiencing what's being dubbed Snowzilla
I
um,
saw the pictures.
by the news. It is absurd the amount of snow that this area that is not well known for getting a lot of snow. My sister in Frederick, Maryland got absolutely dumped on with 4 feet of snow today. And she went outside and could not find her car because it was completely buried in snow. My mother sent me photos. She lives in just outside of D.C. in Virginia, and her entire back patio deck is feet high in snow. All of her patio furniture, all the way up to the hand railing of the deck, is just snow. And it's completely crazy how much snow they're getting. My older sister, who also lives there, the only one that does not of the sisters is my middle sister. She lives in Chicago, where it's probably negative 35 degrees there too. My older sister has a pretty big backyard. She lives on a pretty good sized lot, and she took pictures, and it literally looks like the backwoods from the movie Fargo. It is covered in snow, and they attached a zip line between their neighbor's house and their house that my nephew is zip lining across, because if he falls, he just lands in soft, powdery snow. And he's been sledding in their front yard, which is on sort of a hill, and there's enough snow for him to sled all the way into the street because the plows hadn't come yet, so cars couldn't drive. Pretty crazy.
Hmm.
And if you remember Snowpocalypse from a few years ago, this is apparently worse.
So Snowzilla beats Snowpocalypse.
Any day of the week. Next, it will be Snow Mothra.
Snow Ghidorah.
and then Snow
Mecha Godzilla.
Pacific Rim. I don't know.
Ah.
Those were those big monsters and robots.
Mhm.
I never really saw that movie. I kind of watched it on video, and it was terrible. People
Yeah,
said they liked it. I thought it was awful.
yeah, it was like watching a live action anime type thing, giant robots and giant monsters. I was like, yeah.
And Stephen Colbert had the dude from Pacific Rim who was also the guy from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, who's also in Horrible Bosses. I forget his name, but he was just on The Late Show, and Stephen Colbert was asking him, okay, so if you built these giant robots to fight the giant monsters, and you had the technology to build the giant robots, why wouldn't you build them bigger than the monsters?
Well, here's my question. During the movie, they have one robot that just beats the crap out of a monster, and then launches a single missile at it and kills it.
So why
I
not
mean,
build more of those robots?
no, why not just use missiles?
We
There are
have lots
missiles.
of missiles.
There are missiles that can punch through aircraft carriers and explode inside of them. They can do the same to a giant monster as well.
Last week on this show, because you had technical difficulties, Robinson had technical difficulties. He's like on Pacific Coast Highway right
I
now.
know, that's
What
what
the
it
hell is
looks
he
like.
doing, right? It looks like PCH in California. Maybe he's back home. Last week, because of the technical difficulties, we had
I feel like I'm flying.
a special guest. And because the resolution isn't that great, it looks like an old 8mm movie film or something.
Hmm.
We had a special guest. That special guest was 7-year-old Jackson, who did a 20-minute interview with me on the show where he told us all about his day trip for a birthday party that he went to at Glow Golf. It was a very interesting interview. I was very proud of him because the feedback that you hear in your ears when you're in this studio, and if you're not used to it, it can be very distracting.
Yes.
And so you could tell he was struggling with it a little bit at the beginning, but then he kind of got used to it. Kids are resilient; they're good at shit like that. But
Yeah.
then he started telling the story about him going golfing and all of these things, and I was being completely inappropriate because he was talking about balls and holes and these things that are golf related. But of course, I was just being a pervert, and he didn't pick up on any of it. But I was laughing, and then Robinson picked up on it because he came on halfway through the interview and let me finish the interview with him. And I went back and listened to it when I was editing the show, and it's pretty funny. And this kid is 7 years old and pretty well spoken for being 7 years old, and tells this story, and we enjoyed it thoroughly. So looks like Robinson is getting off the motorbike and will perhaps be ready to join us shortly. Chaz, what do you say we get the show started, since we're 15 minutes in, and Robinson looks like he's getting to a good spot, so we may have to
Dude, he looks hard. He looks hardcore, man. He's got like this black like leather jacket and scarf and helmet thing going.
Until you see what he's riding, you're absolutely right. He looks hardcore, but when you see his little red 50cc scooter, then and Robinson's like 6'2" tall, then you're just kind of like, oh, I see what's going on here. And I believe that's Morning, his friend.
Morning?
And yep, Morning is her name, and they're kind of the inseparable twins in Vietnam. She has been his guide, his friend, his flatmate from time to time, his partner in crime, and I don't know. I know Robinson pretty well, and anybody that spends that much time with Robinson who is of the opposite sex stands a very good chance of falling madly in love with him. So I hope he finds it in his heart to leave Vietnam at one point or another, because he could very well fall in love himself and never come home, and that would be sad for me, because I would have to go to Vietnam to ever see him again. So
and his roots are growing back. He's got like this like white streak going.
yeah,
That's pretty raw. You should just grow that one streak out and keep dyeing everything else.
I dyed my hair black a few days ago.
Days ago? You dyed it before you came to Vietnam, or you used really cheap dye.
And then I went. No, my hair just grows really fast.
Yeah.
I went to Hanoi, and my last day in Hanoi, which was 5 days ago. I can't remember. Just less than a week ago, I dyed it before I came back here, and it's already. I got to get rid of the color and go back to gray, but I don't know how to do that.
I have to cut my hair once a week. It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. But
your hair grows really.
It does. And Robinson, I only hope to have a head of hair like yours when I am your age.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
I don't know. I hope I will. My grandfather said when he was still alive, and I remember being a kid, and he said, "Grandson, I'll tell you the secret. If you ever shave your head before you start losing your hair, you will never go bald." So when I was 18 years old, I shaved all my hair off. And now, even compared to most of my friends my age, I definitely have more hair than most of them. I'm talking to you, Jeff Patch. I'm talking to you.
All right, I just gotta know, Robinson, what is around your neck?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a
He's got hickey.
wife beater. It's a tank top. It's just a shirt.
Oh, okay.
But when I came to Vung Tau, the road here, it's about 2 hours on a scooter, and I didn't have anything to cover my mouth.
Ah, got
A lot of people wear it's just like a little face mask so you don't get
Oh, I
smoke-
remember riding.
smoking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's a
I
lot.
remember
There's no.
riding
There's
a
no.
motorcycle down the street, man. It is not fun to
regulations.
get crap kicked up in your face,
Ugh.
especially when you would ride.
Yeah,
near
it's
the
like
beach
Mexico.
cities.
There's no EPA.
Right.
Ugh.
All right, Robinson.
Right? So there's all of these exhaust. Exhaust is really bad. Just by the time I got from from Ho Chi Minh to Vung Tau, I could feel this thick layer of black soot on my skin,
Ugh.
and I had so about at least 4 or 5 times a day I have to stop and find a sink and wash my face. At home I take a shower about 4 or 5 times a day. If I need to go out to the store just to go, buy some milk, and I decide I'm gonna walk. I'm just gonna walk because it's a nice day. I'll walk 3 blocks, buy some milk, get home, and I'm so soaking wet from my own sweat that I have to take a shower.
All right, we're gonna start the show. Robinson, if you can mute yourself, get situated. We'll start the show, and then we'll get rolling. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, Chaz. I'm gonna start the bumper music here. YouTube, we're gonna get started. Sober Happy Hour in 5, 4, 3. Welcome to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. I am your host. We are coming to you live on YouTube.com, streaming on RadioValencia.fm, and all around the world via iTunes on podcast. Maybe one day, someday, via Twitter on VCast, but that's another conversation altogether. You can shoot us an email, soberhappyhour@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter @soberhappyhour. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/soberhappyhour. And with me, as always, my 2 very good friends who I saw in the flesh tonight, one of you, and the other is thousands of miles away in Vietnam. I have Chaz and I have Robinson. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, gentlemen.
All right. Well, last
I'm
night
like
was a
way
big.
awake.
Last night was a bit of a tragedy. We lost Robinson for a while. We lost Chaz for the entire night, which was weird because it still doesn't make sense why Chaz's audio wasn't working. But apparently, the universe had other plans, but now we're all here. We're all back. And I'm grateful for that. Robinson, tell us where you are.
I'm in Vung Tau, VUNGTAU, and it's a very, very lovely, beautiful resort town in the south, not the south, but I should say the west coast, west of Vietnam, west of Saigon.
And
I'm in Vietnam.
Are you listening to Vietnamese ABBA right now? Because that's what it sounds like is on the radio. It is Vietnamese ABBA. No?
It's karaoke.
Oh.
I'm in an outside restaurant, which is all rocks on the side of a mountain.
It looks
Next to a
cool.
big statue. And it looks like there's a whole bunch of students that are here today for some kind of field trip or something. And maybe they're doing karaoke. I don't know. Karaoke. Bad karaoke is like the most famous thing here.
That's like any Asian country. Karaoke is the coolest.
And,
I wish.
And it's bad karaoke.
Right.
Everybody
and I wish,
appreciates when someone can't sing. And
I wish that Americans were that open about their bad singing and didn't have to get wasted before they did it.
Karaoke.
Do you karaoke, Robinson? Uh-oh.
Just as we were saying.
Just because I can.
Got it. We don't know what you said because you once again sounded a little like Optimus Prime. But I'm sure you're sharing the Wi-Fi with a handful of people. So that's probably what the issue is.
Phone.
Oh,
I have 3G.
I see. I saw a sign when you got off your motorcycle that said Wi-Fi, and I figured in Vietnamese or American English that meant the same thing. But I could be wrong.
Yes. I'm sure there's Wi-Fi here, but I haven't found the password yet.
Aha, you'll have to bribe someone with 50,000 dong.
50,000 dong? You mean a quarter?
A quarter. One Washington quarter, please.
Yes, one Washington. That's
Chaz,
a lot of money. That will buy
what
you
are you looking at?
I am looking at a bunch of numbers.
Well, that sounds boring. So we
Bunch
wanted
of red, trippy numbers.
we wanted to have a show tonight with a legitimate topic, and Chaz was nice enough to send along some information to me today. Robinson, I still have not received a single text message from you for the last few weeks, so that's why I keep responding to you via Facebook Messenger, because that's the only way I seem to be able to get a hold of you consistently. But the topic that we wanted to talk about tonight on the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast was, Chaz, you sent me a link to something called the Pharma-death clock.
Yes.
And the Pharma-death clock is what, my friend?
The Pharma-death clock is it's a live updated website that shows the total deaths in the United States since January 1 of 2000 that are medical related.
So the deaths from medical related instances, problems, whatever.
For instance, iatrogenic
in the last 16
deaths,
years.
hospital errors, hospital malnutrition, SSRIs, antidepressants, antipsychotics, prescription opioids, surgery-related. Alone, in the last 15 years, iatrogenic deaths, that means when a doctor accidentally kills a patient,
Whoops.
and hospital errors, in the last 15 years, and I believe this is a worldwide statistic perhaps, hopefully, has killed 19 million people.
Nice.
Yes.
Wow.
In 15 years, 19 million people. Chemotherapy has killed 16 million. But
So-
those other two combined are 19.
So the apple a day keeps the doctor away means a lot more to me now than it did 5 minutes ago.
Yes, and going into a hospital could be seen from a risk management perspective as a very reckless and ill-advised move if you're looking for some kind of health improvement.
To me, death is not a health improvement.
No.
But
It depends
maybe-
on your condition.
well, it depends on your state of mind too, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something. Eating a Starburst on live radio is a bad idea.
Oh, yeah.
Bad. It is stuck in my teeth now, and I don't know what I was thinking. This was a terrible idea. Chaz, quick, say something.
Okay, so that figure that I just read, um, that's in the United States. That wasn't a worldwide figure.
19 million just in the U.S.?
Yeah,
Oh, my.
yeah, and this thing it's pharma-death-toll.com, and that's PHARMA deathclock.com.
Wait, wait,
And if
wait.
you
Hold on. Hold on.
yes, uh-huh,
I just did the math in my mind, right? Because I'm good at math.
uh-huh.
19 million in the last 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than 1 million a year.
That's what it's saying.
That's
But what I'm
a
thinking,
lot of people. Holy crap.
well, yeah, I'm looking at. Okay, so I click on that. Death by medicine is what it calls iatrogenic. If you go down to the bottom, there are references, and it's a reference to each one of the conditions. So all of the different ones show what country they come from, and the great majority of them are all from the U.S. I mean, there's a few from the United Kingdom, and there are a few that are worldwide, like opioids and prescription drugs and heroin is a worldwide statistic, and it's got deaths per year also.
Mhm.
So chemotherapy in a given year kills 1 million people. That's not cancer. That's
Right. That's the
the
chemo that's supposed to help stop the cancer.
yes.
Wow. So here's the question. We know recently our U.S. healthcare system was ranked 37th, 38th in the world. And I wonder if these numbers are taken into consideration when they make those claims, right? Because
Well, here, get this, okay? And this is on one of the references.
Mhm.
In the Western world, chemotherapy deaths are recorded as cancer deaths, not drug deaths.
Really,
Yes.
that seems rather disingenuous.
Yeah. In the
Therapy. Is
in
chemotherapy a drug?
well, it's
Chemo is a
chemical.
drug.
Chemical.
Yeah.
Chemical,
Yeah.
but it's not really a drug.
But it's not the cancer that killed you necessarily.
In
If
other
you-
words, medically induced. You know, it's considered a medicine. But chemotherapy, since a 2004 study in Britain, cancer has overtaken heart disease to become the #1 cause of death in Britain.
cancer.
Yeah, well, and remember that cancer is the deaths by chemotherapy are counted as cancer.
That just so my brain can't even process this information because all right, I'm gonna tell a little bit of a personal story right now. My family situation is a little bit complicated. You know, I have a stepfather and a biological father, and it's my immediate family life situation is also a little bit complicated. But I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. So, my kid's grandmother recently, a couple days before Christmas, this Christmas, 2015, passed away from essentially brain cancer. But when she was diagnosed with brain cancer back in May or June of 2015, they gave her 2 weeks to live. They basically said, holy shit, we were way wrong about what your diagnosis was. Originally, she started feeling strange, went to the doctor. They said, you just need some rest. Didn't get better. She started forgetting words, having trouble speaking and putting sentences together. They said, you're having a nervous breakdown. You need to take some time off work. You need to rest. Got even worse and was having trouble with coordination, and the speech got worse. Went to a third doctor that said, holy shit, you have a brain full of cancer. You have 2 weeks to live if you do nothing. If you do this really aggressive chemotherapy, you could prolong your life for maybe a month or 6 weeks. She lasted more than 6 months after a fairly aggressive round of chemotherapy and whatever else she did. The chemo, I always thought that chemo made you vomit, made you ill, made you weak, made you super skinny, and then susceptible to other illnesses that would end up taking your life potentially. But she ended up gaining a bunch of weight, and when she finally died in late December, would that be death because of the cancer or death because of the ongoing chemo and radiation treatment?
It depends on
probably
what's on
won't-
the death certificate, really.
Right, but
And
they probably wouldn't tell me that, right? They probably wouldn't even, it would just be cancer death, right? But it could have been a chemo death.
yeah, it depends on death by medicine or other things. I mean, what's called the International Classification of Disease, the ICD codes, is a numeric system that doctors and other health officials use to track how people die or different diseases that are diagnosed in the world. So, for instance, there's an actual number, a code that is reflects being killed by a falling alligator. So
Being
you
killed
have
by a fallen alligator.
so what you and the way that works is you have death by being crushed, and then it goes then what you were crushed by, and then what kind of thing crushed you. In other words, crushed by animal related, and then it goes further down to like reptilian, and then even it goes way down, so that just a string of numbers would tell you, oh, this person died by being crushed by a falling alligator.
Wow. And what if? So I would imagine there's a different code for being crushed by a falling crocodile.
I'm not sure if it gets exactly to that, but this was the explanation and such that I saw as far as when they just implemented the new ICD codes, the ICD-10. So many medical systems all over the world had to revamp everything because it uses a different number set.
Death by falling caiman lizard.
So someone has to die by having an alligator fallen upon them in order to get on that list.
Well, it's not. I mean, there may never have been anyone who did that, but but that's a possibility if you arrange certain numbers.
Right. So so death by crushing. Death by crushing via something falling on you.
Okay.
Death by crushing via something falling on you that was a living thing, then a reptile, then a crocodile. So it could be death by crushing via something falling on you that was inanimate, that was made of wood, death by falling bookshelf. Right?
So it's like a cross hatch kind of series of numbers where the first digit means one thing and this. Okay, that makes sense. So,
that makes sense to me.
So someone dying by being eaten by a crocodile would be a similar code, but the one number being eaten.
Okay.
Which
here's an example. Here's an example.
Hold on.
Okay, all right,
because to me, that would be what Robinson just mentioned, is death by being consumed by something, right? So this gets very confusing because a couple hundred years ago, death by consumption was something totally different.
That was tuberculosis.
Right. So now you have death by actual consumption. You have been consumed.
So
and then there's probably death by consumption, where you died by eating too much of something.
Well, here,
and now we are just out of control.
Get this one. It's 16.V97.33XD. Sucked into jet engine subsequent encounter.
Subsequent encounter.
Wow.
So
Yes, in other words,
not the primary encounter.
no, you were sucked into a jet engine, survived, and then it happened again.
So you got sucked into a jet engine, got sucked into another jet engine, and then at the end you see the code for being crushed by a falling alligator. You had a bad day.
Yeah, it's all it really is just mixing and matching different numbers and letters and codes.
What about
Until you...
being sucked in by a giant fan? So you're on a fan boat in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So you get sucked in by the fan, and then the alligator gets sucked in by the fan, and then the alligator goes up into the air, and then it lands on you. Death by falling alligator after being sucked in by a fan, and then drowning in a swamp. That would probably be a really interesting numeric code.
So here's another one. 11.Y92146. Swimming pool of prison as the place of occurrence of the external cause. And there is also a code for day spa of a prison as the place of occurrence.
I want to go to that prison. Wait,
Yeah.
I don't want to put that out in the
Struck
universe.
by duck, subsequent encounter.
And then-
Spacecraft collision injuring occupant.
Struck by
Sequela.
goose would be different. Wow. This is very interesting.
So, why are we talking about this tonight?
Well, to me, I think that we had an episode where we talked about death by drugs, death by pharmaceuticals, death by overdose, death by, accidental overdose, where we talked about a lot of drug deaths, the numbers that went along with those drug deaths, and looking at some of these pharma death stats, I'm realizing that some of those numbers might exist intentionally or unintentionally. They could be skewing the public perception of drug-related deaths, because we may just jump to the conclusion that death by morphine tends to be related to drug abusers. But in reality, I would guess, and I could be wrong, but I would wager that death by morphine is probably more likely to occur under medical supervision in a hospital or in hospice or something like that than it is via accidental overdose by a drug user, like by an addict.
It's an unseen danger. And a lot...
Just like a falling alligator. That might be an
Exactly.
unseen danger as well.
Exactly. And so when people try to stigmatize drug use and other activities as being immoral and bad because they're dangerous and you may lose your life, here are all these other things that are health and life related, like, having surgery and all these other things that can kill you as well, and kills quite a few people per year. So really it's like, okay, who are you to judge really the activities of any other? Psychiatric drugs alone, and keep in mind, I take psych drugs, okay? But I acknowledge and accept the risk, all right? I understand that they are not safe by any means, because in Western countries, 500,000 deaths per year, but it also includes suicides that are induced by psychiatric medication.
That just, to me, seems like such a bullshit statistic then, if they're lumping the two together. Like, one is designed to try and treat suicidal tendencies, and at the same time we're lumping the suicides in with the accidental overdose or misuse or taking of those drugs. That seems absurd to me.
Hospital malnutrition.
I saw a good one. Bed sores.
Yep.
1.8 million deaths in the last 15 years from bed sores.
115,000 deaths per year from bed sores.
No joke.
Yeah.
When? 115,000 just in the past year?
Per year, average
Wow.
per year.
From bed sores.
Bed sores. People that aren't being properly tended to, that are, in a vegetative state or something, that can't get out of their hospital bed.
Okay, so here's opioids right here, pain relievers. 16,235 deaths per year in the U.S. And I don't know if that means, if they were prescribed or not, but
so
still.
we had an interesting conversation this evening with a physician.
Yes.
And we were talking about an anonymous person who was being prescribed 180 milligrams of oxycodone per day by a doctor. And for pain, 180 milligrams. Now, the interesting part was they determined that 180 milligrams per day is way more than any one person should need. And they decided they were going to cut back from 180 to 150 milligrams per day, just to try to be safer, try to make sure that these excess drugs weren't being sold or given away or even just taken by this one person. That's dangerous over a long period of time. And what's interesting is his comments were, nobody taking 180 milligrams of oxycodone per day would be that functional. And I agree with that statement. You wouldn't really be that functional taking that much. So when they decided to cut back the 180 to 150, this person went insane and started threatening lawsuits and to go to the medical board over it, and to go to the state insurance that was providing the health insurance for him about it, and file a complaint, whatever. And the first thing that came to my mind was, if I'm getting prescribed 180 milligrams of oxycodone per day, I'm probably not taking all of it. I may not be taking any of it. I'm selling it at that point, or stockpiling it for the zombie apocalypse. But here's the process. This is what was really interesting. Was the process is, you come in for your monthly refill.
Regularly scheduled.
Yep, your scheduled every 30-day refill appointment, and they piss test you, and they piss test you to make sure that the drug that they are prescribing to you is present in your urine, which to the medical industry means you're taking the drugs that are prescribed to you. So we will prescribe you your next 30-day refill. The problem with this process is that opioids, oxycodone, will enter your bloodstream and then your urine very, very, very quickly. Within an hour of taking one pill, you'll piss dirty, right? So how easy would it be if somebody's making thousands of dollars selling these drugs that they're being prescribed by their doctor? They know, it's the first of the month, I gotta go see the doctor to get my prescription refilled. Pop a pill an hour before my appointment, and now they piss test me, and I test positive for the oxy, and they're gonna write me a new prescription.
I'm not sure, but I believe that the test doesn't indicate how much is in your system, just that it is in your system.
As far as I know,
could take 10 milligrams of Oxycontin,
right.
and it will show positive.
As far as I know, from the drug tests that I've taken, it basically is just a pass-fail. If the drug is present, the strip turns pink. it's positive. If the drug is not present, the strip stays white. It's negative. So yeah, it does not matter. They'd have to actually test your blood, and it would be a much more expensive test. It would take a lot longer. But the piss test is almost instant. They dip the little strip. Anybody that's used a home drug test knows it takes 2 minutes. Chemical reaction happens. It sees that drug. You're positive. Here's your new prescription for your 180 milligrams per day of oxy. So the bigger and scarier part of this is he mentioned to us that if you're a doctor and let's say you're doing the post-surgery pain management for someone and you want to make sure that this person is able to sleep soundly for the next few nights so that they can recover properly from a procedure. So you prescribe them some Valium, for example. Well, his methodology is to prescribe only enough to get through the period that he intends to get them through. So if he knows they're going to need half a tablet twice a day for 4 days to be able to rest up and recuperate from a gallbladder surgery, then he will prescribe them 2 pills or 4 pills. That's it. And that bottle that they get from the pharmacy will only contain 4 Valium pills. Other doctors that are prescribing, oh, well, I'll just give you this 30-day supply of Valium, you take it until you don't need it anymore, they get referred to commonly by the street urchins as the candy man, is the term that he used. So, oh, that doctor is a candy man. You go in there telling him that you have a boo-boo and your back hurts, and he's going to write you a script for Percocet, and he's going to write you a nice big 30-day supply. So those doctors, through word of mouth, get figured out pretty quickly by the scumbags, and now they're lining up outside the clinic to get their candy man to write them some prescriptions for some candy. And he has worked very hard during his short career thus far to make sure that he cannot and will not ever be thought of as a doctor that overprescribes medication. And I would say very comfortably
Admirable.
that it's admirable for sure, but I will tell you, just by being a father and being a patient with a heart issue, that it is not uncommon with my previous physician that I go in there and mention one tiny little thing to him. Hey, doc, I've been having this ache in my elbow, and all of a sudden I'm being prescribed 3 different medications to try and solve a problem that, could be tendinitis. I'm not being prescribed physical therapy or an MRI or, hey, ice it for the next couple of weeks and see if it gets better. I'm being prescribed drugs. Here is your prescription. And I find that to be disheartening. It's frustrating because that's not how it should be. It didn't used to be that physicians saw their patients for 5 minutes, wrote them a prescription for drugs, and then shooed them out of the office. They used to practice medicine. That's why they call it that. That they would make a follow-up visit for you in a couple of days. They would try something. They would try something else. They would try a third thing, and then really try to solve this problem. It took Rachel and me 7 years to finally... Go ahead.
Rachel and I.
No, it is me. It took me 7 years.
Continue.
Rachel and me, Robinson. Don't be a
You're right. All right, I
smartass,
stand
or
corrected.
I'm going to punch you right in your throat.
Okay, I won't correct you anymore. Okay,
Please correct
7
me.
years?
So it took us 7 years to finally find an allergist who was willing to stop prescribing our son medication and steroids and the same shit over and over again for his asthma and allergies. He had asthma triggered by allergies. And every year when the weather would change, we would end up with a kid who could not breathe. And we would go to the doctor, and they would give us more drugs and give us more steroids and tell us to do this regimen until we finally had enough. And my grandmother, who is 80-something years old, told us about a treatment that she had done for my uncle in the 60s, where she had to make weekly trips out to the allergist, who concocted a specific dose of basically an immunotherapy treatment that she would have to inject in him over the course of an entire year to build up an immunity to the allergens that were causing his asthma. And when she shared this with us, go ahead, Robinson.
My father went through the same treatment.
Right. It was common back then, and it just doesn't get practiced very much anymore. But we found somebody that would do it, and for the last few months, I have been giving my 7-year-old son 6 injections per week. This will last for a year, but at that point, that year's worth of what you basically consider exposure therapy, his body will naturally produce the defenses that it needs to not be allergic to the shit that was making him allergic, that was making him asthmatic. But if we hadn't pushed for this and figured this out and found this and heard this story from my grandmother, we would still be fighting twice a year with a kid who couldn't breathe and pumping him full of steroids and drugs, because they just don't practice medicine like they used to.
Well, they don't practice medicine. They prescribe drugs.
Yeah.
Yes. It's easy.
It's easy, and it is fruitful.
And the pharmaceutical industry, which gave them their scholarship to get through school to become a doctor, is who they are beholden to. So,
And to me, that seems so backwards
yeah.
that it is absolutely disgusting.
If you go to any veterinarian, you will find that they sell Science Diet, because Science Diet Pet Food Company is the only company that sponsors or offers scholarships for veterinarians.
There's
It's
another
the worst
one.
dog food, it's the worst food you can get, but because they kind of have to.
And there's another one that I've seen lately, Robinson, that all of the vets, my wife breeds Sphinx cats. If anybody wants a Sphinx cat, send me an email. We can get you one. And we are now an official cattery. This is our certificate from the Cat Fanciers Association of America. We are a cattery, and we breed Sphinx cats. And when you go to a veterinarian's office now, a lot of them and a lot of breeders now are recommending a specific food, both dog and cat breeders. It has happened to us twice now when before we started rescuing dogs, we got our terrier from a breeder, we got our Great Dane from a breeder, and it was interesting because both of these breeders recommended that we keep the dog on Royal Canine dog food. And I thought that was interesting. Then I come to find out that some of these breeders, when they're a true licensed breeder with pedigreed dogs and cats, they can get a similar kind of sponsorship, if you will, from the pet food maker, who basically gives them all the pet food they could ever need for their, brood, and as long as they are essentially prescribing that pet food to the animal that's being sold to the eventual owner. And do I think that's bad? No, I don't think that's bad. That's business. But do I think it's a little bit shady? Yes, because if you look at the ingredients on most pet food, most high-end pet food versus low-end pet food, the differences are so slight that they almost don't matter. And if you really want to feed your pet something good, figure out what kind of animal it is. Is it a feline? Is it a canine? Is it a bird? And do 10 minutes worth of research online to find out what that type of animal eats in the wild. And if it eats raw meat, feed it raw meat. If it eats, if it's a rat and it mostly eats garbage, then feed it table scraps. Cats should not be eating grains. Cats are carnivores, period. They should be eating raw, uncooked, unprocessed meat. And it doesn't mean you have to go buy your cat a steak. It means you can get your cat, the scraps of a chicken, a deboned chicken back. They will gladly eat that.
Do you remember what I fed sooner?
Absolutely.
I would go to the Whole Foods market or, some organic grocery store, and I would buy a whole chicken, raw, uncooked. And I would also buy a small jar of baby food, which was usually something green, like beans or
spinach,
broccoli, spinach, some kind of a green. And I would take the whole chicken, chop it up, put it, bones and all, and put it through the grinder.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would take this mash and mix in the greens, because a small amount of chlorophyll or some kind of greens are necessary.
Folic acid is what's
okay, so a cat in the wild would eat a bird. It wouldn't cook it first. It wouldn't mix it with rice or corn or anything like that. It would just eat the bird, and inside the bird's digestive system would be some of these greens.
Bingo.
So that's part of the cat's diet. So I would just grind this all up, and I would take the whole thing, put it in ice cube trays, freeze all of it, and once a day I would feed my cat 1 ice cube worth of meat. And that was all she needed.
Yep.
That was it. I would go in the morning and I would put 1 ice cube tray, 1 ice cube of frozen chicken in her dish, and she wouldn't eat it because she wasn't hungry, but she would wait, and then when it came time for her to eat, it would have been thawed, and she would go and eat it. And she would never ask for more. She was never overweight. She was never underfed. Yep. That was the exact amount that cat needed.
And if you really want to take it to the next level, cats are hunters. So if you want, just like I do with my birds, rather than just throwing a bunch of food in a bowl, you can hide bits of the food in little Dixie cups that they have to rip apart to get to the food, and they have to, so birds forage for their food, right? If it's all in one place, that's how they get obese, they get lazy. So my parrot will rip apart a toy to get to a little bit of food, and then rip apart a Dixie cup to get to a little bit of food, because they spend 80% of their time in the wild foraging for food. So with a cat or a dog, if you can find a toy that is also a food dispenser, you can kind of do the same thing, where they're batting at it, figuring out how to open it, getting it open, and then enjoying their meal. That's like hunting. So it helps also with brain stimulation. So I'm not sure how we got on this topic, but it's more about how vets prescribe a dog food because they're beholden to a brand. Breeders prescribe a cat food because they're sponsored by a brand. Doctors prescribe a medication because they're being paid by the pharmaceutical company, and round and round and round we go.
Going back to the allergies, I grew up with a lot of bad allergies, and I learned a long time ago that anything that I was allergic to, I'm basically, when you're allergic to something, your body is reacting to something that's coming in through your nose mainly, because that's the filter for the air. And if there's particles in the air, like, pollens or something, and you're allergic to that flower, then your your nose is going to detect this foreign pollen and create a histamine reaction with all of your snot. Basically is going to encapsulate this foreign substance, and then you're going to squeeze it out or spit it out.
Mm-hmm.
So the pollen never actually goes into your system. The allergy is the reaction of your histamines. It's not the reaction of the pollen.
Right.
So I've been allergic to cats all of my life, and except for Rex cats because they have no hair.
And Sphinx cats.
Sphinx cats, yes. And every cat is different. So I can like have one cat and not be allergic to it, and have another one and be allergic to that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured out this system a long time ago, and I've shared it with many people. If I have a cat, and I've had many cats in my life, as you know, whenever I get a cat that I'm allergic to, or even if it's not my cat, but it's my girlfriend's cat or someone's cat, and I want to go and be around that cat, I'll take a cat brush the cat for about maybe 10 minutes, and no cat is going to say, no, don't brush me. So I'll just brush the cat for about 10 minutes, and then I'll take all the hair that's collected in the brush. I'll take it out into a big lump and turn it into a string, and I take the string and I break it into 10 little pieces. And I take each piece and I put it inside a gelatin capsule. And I eat one gelatin capsule a day for 10 days. And my body, not through my sinuses, but
Mm-hmm.
through my stomach and the hydrochloric acid, it breaks it down and it acknowledges what these foreign substances are that I'm allergic to, and it builds an immunity to that cat in 10 days.
Which is exactly what the subcutaneous injection of the allergen that I give to my 7-year-old son 3 times a week is doing.
Yes, exactly. It's not going in one way, it's going in another way where the body can break it down and acknowledge it and recognize it and deal with it and, build an immunity.
And do its magic thing. That's remarkable.
Common
That's
sense.
actually a really, really interesting story.
So instead of taking something to counteract the symptoms or the symptoms of the allergy, it makes more sense to attack the cause.
So I like this conversation because it brings me all the way back full circle to a conversation about addiction. Because a lot of people think that if you take away the drug or the alcohol or the behavior from the addict, you have solved the problem. I know from years of experience with this now, that is bullshit, unfortunately. Because if it was as easy as just, I'm going to take away all your booze and 10 days later you'll be fine, then we wouldn't have this epidemic of addiction and alcoholism that we have in this world. We know we have to treat it just like you treat your cat allergy, just like I'm treating Jackson's environmental allergies. We know that we have to not just treat the symptom. The symptom is the using. We have to treat the problem. And for every addict, the problem itself, the reason for whatever the behavior is, could potentially be very, very different. Are they depressed? Are they unstable? Are they or are they physically addicted to this drug, right? What made them take the drugs in the first place? Are they just bored? Are they miserable with their life? You know, so you can't just say, I'm going to wean somebody off of alcohol, and as long as I remind them how bad the alcohol is for them and how, messed up their life got, they'll stay away from it forever and they'll be fine. We know that's not true. So it's essentially the same kind of thought process, that you have to treat the underlying problem. So, Chaz,
Yes.
if someone, we're looking at these statistics right now about these pharma deaths.
Yep.
How often, in your guesstimation, and I know this won't be a scientific study by any means, but in your guesstimation, how many of these pharma deaths do you think we could prevent if we were treating underlying causes rather than throwing drugs at problems?
Anything I
First of all,
answer
you
would
can't
be
treat stupidity.
Say that again?
You can't treat stupidity.
You
anything I
can.
would give you,
It's
any
with a
answer
drug
to
overdose.
that question. Any answer to that question is total bullshit.
Fine, but
Because
just
that-
we just
no,
want your
no, no,
opinion.
no. Well, okay, my opinion is, from a purely statistical stance, you couldn't tell.
Okay.
I mean, really, I don't know.
So why are
It's-
so many people dying from drugs that they're being prescribed by their physicians? Is it misuse, overuse, ignorance?
all
You
of
know,
them.
Okay.
I mean,
You're-
when it comes to this type of stuff, I mean, this is like what I do in the real world. When it comes to this type of stuff, these are interesting numbers and everything, but again, doing a little more digging is required for it. And looking for numbers, the kind that you're mentioning, it's just an exercise in futility. I mean, really, we'd love to know that. If we could know that kind of thing, we would save millions, I imagine.
Would
But
it matter?
saving millions, absolutely.
No.
So,
Would it matter if we figured out a number of these people that died unnecessarily due to acute drug intoxication? Chemotherapy kills people. It's labeled cancer death. If we could figure that out, do you think, maybe I'm a cynic, but I don't think it would matter, because I think there are too many people making too much money that would never allow it to matter enough to make it stop.
it's a bit cynical. But
I know it is. I
do
just told you
believe
it was.
Yes, I'll have to
That's
think
the
more
sad
about
part.
that. Yeah.
That's the part that scares me, because if the car manufacturers currently have the technology, they have the ability right now, we know it could be done, that we could build a car that gets 1,000 miles to a gallon of diesel. But they're not going to do that. They're not going to build a car that gets 100 miles to the gallon of gasoline, because the gasoline companies would never let that happen in 1,000 years. Our president passed a bill that said by 2036, by 2036, 20 more years from now, the auto industry has to start producing cars that get 10 or 15% more mileage per gallon.
Has to start.
Sure, we have to start somewhere. I don't disagree
No.
with that.
In other words, they can do nothing in 20 years and then just wait, and then start.
Right, because just like there was these ridiculous train derailments that happened in New York City this past year in 2015 with some of these tanker trains, right, with oil tanker trains that happened in various states, and then there was part of the subway system that derailed in New York City a few months back, and a couple of years ago, they determined that the safety systems in these trains were not good enough, and that some of the conductors were going way too fast around way too sharp turns. And so there was a company that created a safety system that was only going to cost a couple $1 million to install on the entire transit system in New York State to limit the conductors or engineers' ability to ride the train too high a speed when it got to these areas. Basically like GPS and computers that would automatically slow the train down when it got to an area, and not allow a governing system basically that wouldn't allow the train to be driven too quickly around dangerous curves that were known for being dangerous. People died. They passed a law that said you have 10 years to implement these safety features. That end of that 10 years is 2017. And only like 5% of the trains at this point, 2016, have been upgraded to the new safety system because they have until 2017 to do it. So now they're scrambling to get it done, and they're saying, well, hold on, this is going to take too long, it's going to cost too much, we need more time. When the reality is, you didn't need more time. You didn't start working on it until a year before the homework assignment was due. You procrastinated. And now, a few months ago, people died because the safety feature had not been implemented. I think it happened in Brooklyn. So, same thing goes for the car manufacturers. They know we need to do something about burning fossil fuels. You can tell when you look at a picture of Shanghai. Yet, they pass a law, and then they give them 20 years to implement the changes, so they do nothing for 19 years. That's bureaucracy, right? Mm-hmm. That's big business. So even if we said, hey, we're prescribing way too much chemotherapy for people, there are alternatives to this, this is killing millions of people, you have until 2040 to come up with a better way, that means for the next 30 years, we're still killing 9 million people. It's crazy. That's crazy. Just like the conversation that we had a few weeks ago about some of the drugs. We talked about that episode of a podcast from NPR. It was an episode of the podcast. What the hell is it called? I don't remember. The episode was called The Fix. Robinson sent me a link. I had already listened to it. We all kind of stumbled upon it at the same time, where there are drugs that are like magic that help someone who cannot control their alcohol intake drink less alcohol because of the way that the drug occupies the pleasure center of the brain. We know that these work because they've been tested to work, and they have been approved by the FDA to work, but we do not use them. We do not prescribe them. They could be saving thousands of lives. Why is that? Is it because the recovery industry is too big? Is it because, the same reason we'll never find a cure to cancer, because treating cancer is way too profitable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and especially looking at the now knowing that death by chemotherapy is listed as death by cancer, it also brings up an idea that, say, and I've heard this for breast cancer, prostate cancer, a lot of other different cancers. You know, people talk about, you know, getting mammograms and X-rays and everything. Well, mammograms, X-rays, and all that, that's radiation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have like a history of cancer in your family, but you increasingly expose yourself to more and more radiation, it may simply be that you have a very sensitive reaction to radiation. So this is an instance, it's an instance in which the medicine itself can, well, kill.
It can, well, and it can exacerbate the problem.
Yeah.
Right. I wonder if the Michael Chertoff porno scanners at the airport could, those there was big controversy with those. They call them porno scanners because they literally strip your clothes off and take pictures of you naked underneath your what you're wearing. Everybody that's been to the airport in the last handful of years has seen these things. You step inside, you put your hands above your head like this, and then it does this spin around you, and it takes a picture of you, and it sees through your clothing. And they've shown these pictures online where they basically, it looks like a negative, and they can see if you have a weapon on you or you're concealing something. And then all they had to do was put it in Photoshop and use the negative effect, which in turn makes it into like a positive. And you literally have like X-ray vision. You can see through people's clothing and you can see them naked. It's absolutely crazy. But the amount of radiation that you get from going through one of those things, they say, is basically like your yearly radiation allotment, if you will, like what human beings should safely be exposed to from an outside source. Wait a minute, you talking to us?
Okay, hold on a second. Yeah. The amount of radiation that those machines produce is probably less than the amount of from being in an airplane in the air.
Yeah.
But by mixing the two together, and if you're a person who travels for business on the regular, like twice a week, going through an airport, going through this, they do not have any studies that show what kind of an effect mixing the radiation that you get exposed to being in an airplane for a few hours above the ionosphere or whatever it is, mixed with the radiation from these porno scanners, what kind of long-term effects these things could have on people.
I mean, all you'd have to do really is just carry a Geiger counter or one of those, REM meters or so through one of those all the way from going through the security and then getting on the flight. I mean, and then see, hey, I accumulated X amount of rads or whatever it is during my flight. And
they did do that.
They did?
Yeah. And that's why the number that I'm not quoting it because I simply don't know the honest answer. Because I could look it up, but
yeah,
they said that it is more radiation than most people think. It is a whole hell of a lot more than when we go through the metal detectors. That's for sure. And yet, by law, the government said, during the Bush administration, we need to fight the terrorists. We're going to install these in all of the
cancer, at the cost of citizens' lives. We're going to save the citizens' lives.
Right. And then, like Chaz was saying,
body with radiation.
And then, like Chaz was saying, we're going to fight the cancer with more radiation. Just seems weird.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting.
I know. It is a strange world we live in.
Hey, let's take a break. I have to go to another location because the music was getting too loud, which is one of those weird things that I have not been able to figure out here about Vietnam. Everywhere you go, if they've got music, it's so fucking loud that it's going to bust your eardrums, and everybody's normally used to that, I guess. I don't understand it. But, so I've left the cafe, and I'm down on the street, and I am...
All right. Then why don't we do this? We'll take a break.
Huntington Beach. Okay.
And then we'll come back for the remaining half of the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. So let me pull up the music here. Chaz is like, "Ooh, break time! I'm leaving." He's always the quickest to leave for break time. So go ahead and mute your audio if you would, Robinson.
All right, I'm going to log off. I'll get back to you soon.
Perfect. All right, we'll see you in just a little bit. I'll play us a song, And we'll be back with the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast second half. When we return, we will continue our conversation about things that make us sad. Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. We'll be back in a few minutes. Enjoy!
Can't do much about the weather. Sit back, watch the fog rolling. I got these hands and a voice that's fading fast. Is it enough to get me there? I take my troubles down the street to 31. Kinda makes me wanna scream. And I watch my Monday slip away from everyone. It kinda makes you wanna hurt someone. And I can't do much about the little things. I kick my feet up, kill the time with TV. And with those longing feet, my tired shoes will get me there. Take me back to what was mine. And I take my troubles down the street to 31. It kinda makes me wanna scream. And I watch my Monday slip away from everyone. It kinda makes me wanna hurt someone, yeah.
Welcome back to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. We have lost Robinson, but only temporarily. Chaz will be rejoining us here shortly, but I pulled up an interesting set of articles, if you will, that expressed concerns regarding the thing that we were just last talking about, which was exposure to radiation from the full body scanners at the airport. And if you do a Google search for airport full body scanners and do a Google image search, you will actually see what these images look like. Now, number one, they claim that these photos cannot be exported or shared or seen by others or anything like that. But these are detailed pictures of full body scanned people, and you can certainly see their jiggly bits. And there's one woman from the UK a few years ago that filed a complaint saying that they made her go through the scanner multiple times, and one of the TSA agents commented on how, quote, cute a figure she had, and they had her go through it 2 or 3 times. And I'm thinking, as you know, a young perverted man, I sure as shit would do the same thing. So if I even think to myself, hey, there's a celebrity or a super hot female that I'm the TSA agent getting paid $10 an hour, I'm happily looking at some of these detailed images of the human figure in the name of national security, I say. But there was a San Francisco-based, the University of California, San Francisco, so UCSF. They are a huge medical school. They expressed serious concern that the use of full body scanners would increase the risk of cancer to children, the elderly, pregnant women, and others who are prone to cancers. Dr. David Brenner reported that radiation exposure from the full body scanners may be up to 20 times greater than previously acknowledged by the Department of Homeland Security back in 2000, that when they first, Michael Chertoff basically with DHS said, we're putting these in all the airports to get the terrorists. And they've also proven that these full body scanners aren't very effective, because there's clothing that you and I can buy online right now, a pair of underwear and a lady's brassiere, that block the full body scanner. It's got some like lead lining that block the scanner from doing its job. So if I'm a bad guy and I know how to spoof one of these by hiding a weapon under my balls, then they're useless. But if you look at some of these pictures, and I can tell by Chaz's facial expression that he did a Google image search.
Yes, I did.
There are some of these, the one specifically of some of the ones that have been altered in Photoshop to take the black and white sort of negative and put it into a positive, and that's a naked person.
Yeah.
That is a detailed naked person, to the point
Like
that,
scary detail.
right, to the point that a lot of the websites that published these images a few years ago had to put black bars, sensor bars, across the private parts. So substantial questions have been raised about the efficacy of the full body scanner device. Research shows that the full body scanners being used by the TSA are not designed to detect powdered explosives, which to me means that's how you beat it. If you could figure out a way to get powdered explosives,
like black powder?
no, like plastic explosives, like
No. Black powder is
Sure.
an explosive.
right, but black powder is not nearly as powerful as a plastic explosive like C4
On a
or something
plane?
like that.
On a plane, that's all you need.
Sure, that's all. But that's the point, Chaz, is that's all you would need. But if
Yeah.
you can get black powder on a plane and you can get plastic explosives on a plane by spoofing one of these scanners, then the scanners are worthless. And it's not worth any, even if the risk is small. To me, not worth the risk. Do a pat down, profile people. I don't give a shit. I don't care if my dad, when I grew up with my father, an immigrant from the lovely country of Peru. He looks Mexican, and I guess also kind of looks Arab. He, if you remember Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, one of the masterminds of 9/11, when they found him living in a hole somewhere, he's the guy that they pulled out of the hole, and his hair is like all crazy, and he's wearing like a white wife beater, and he's got all the chest hair poofing out.
Mm-hmm.
My father could literally be him for Halloween and not have to dress up. They look like twinsies. I have a photograph of the two of them side by side. They literally look identical. So my dad used to get harassed and profiled constantly. We used to live in Southern California. We lived in San Diego, California, a stone's throw from the Tijuana border to Mexico. So we would often go down to Mexico just for fun. Back when you didn't need any form of, you didn't need a passport, didn't even need a birth certificate. You could just go. Every single time, even when I was just going through the Orange County immigration checkpoints, we're in the United States. He is an American citizen. He would get pulled into secondary inspection, and they would search the car. They would ask him a bunch of questions. They would ask us kids a bunch of questions because we look like white kids with some, creepy Mexican father. He's not even Mexican. And they were profiling. That's, to me, the idea of profiling for national security, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of shit for this. To me, if it inconvenience a couple of people, and if they're that goddamn sensitive that now I have to be irradiated every time I go into the airport, and my fucking 11-year-old has to take off his shoes, it's just unnecessary. And I get it. The terrorists could hide bombs in grandma's wheelchair. Fine. We're doing our due diligence. But if these things are ineffective, can be spoofed, are potentially harmful to my health, then pat me down. I don't know about you, Chaz. I'm not a big fan of physical contact from strangers. I have personal space issues, but
I've got a bubble.
Yeah, but there's something different about going to a hairdresser or a barber or a doctor or a place where you kind of know that you're walking into a situation where you're going to be touched, right? One of my favorite things in the world to do, going to a clothing store where they're going to measure me for a fitted suit, right? They're taking the tape measure and they're measuring it across your chest and your arms and your neck and your legs or whatever. There's something very relaxing about that. There are entire series of videos on YouTube that help you sleep by taking you through those kinds of experiences kind of virtually with sound. It's called ASMR. So would I really be that bothered to have someone from the TSA do a pat down to make sure that I don't have weapons on me? No, I don't think I would really mind that too much. If it meant that I wasn't going to have my balls irradiated and seen by a bunch of weirdos behind a screen looking at my naked ass in a porno scanner. Maybe that's just me. So
I wonder how many people apply for that job just so they can get off.
That is a great question, and something tells me that they saw an influx of young male perverts trying to apply for TSA airport screening as soon as Chertoff put the porno scanners in the airport. Guaranteed. So we were talking before you came that if you do a Google image search for this, you can absolutely see what the outrage was about. And yes, some of these images show people that have cleverly hidden weapons on them, and the machine can see that. It shows up and looks just like a weapon. So they're able to say, hey, you, step out of there. We're going to pat you down. Holy shit, you have a gun up your butt. But that doesn't happen very often, if ever. And still, we had already implemented these porno scanners when that Christmas Day guy got on the plane and tried to blow up his shoes or his underpants or something. That guy got through the porno scanner, and he almost blew up an airplane by blowing up his Hanes briefs. So come on, man, don't irradiate me. My food's already irradiated. I learned a very interesting fact the other day, Chaz.
Yes. But
You ever buy eggs from the grocery store?
No,
You ever buy apples from the grocery store?
sometimes.
You do know that they sell those things at the grocery store, though, right?
Yeah,
Eggs.
they're near the meat section.
The little white things, they come in a carton, crack them
Yeah.
open, there's a goo inside. That's an
Ye-
egg.
yeah.
From a chicken.
You used to have them.
I did, and I miss them terribly. I really want to get some chickens again. I loved having those chickens. I can't decide if the trade-off of the smell and the flies is worth it, but I miss going out there and collecting those eggs. So, apples. I read a statistic the other day, and I thought you'd find it interesting. Apples that you get at the grocery store, from the regular grocery store, do you know what the average age of an apple is by the time you buy it at the grocery store?
No, I do not.
Robinson, want to take a guess?
No, I can't even begin to imagine, but I know that they spend a lot of time on cargo ships from foreign countries like Chile or
True.
Argentina.
They don't come from the U.S.?
Sometimes, depends on the season.
Fuji,
But
Fuji apples, I think they come from Japan.
the average age of an apple you buy at the grocery store is 10 months. The apple you are eating has been on a farm or an orchard, in a warehouse somewhere, on a cargo ship, on a truck, in another warehouse, and then shipped to the grocery store. By the time it gets to you, on average, the average apple is 10 months old.
And then it goes bad like within a week.
Well, it depends on how you're storing them.
Yes, if you store it in a nitrogen container, it will probably last another 10 months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because usually that's how they're being stored. They're stored in an oxygen-free environment. Nitrogen prevents them from spoiling, and they look beautiful and shiny and wonderful, and you eat them and they still taste okay because apples can last a long time. But I still think it's interesting that, fresh apple is not very fresh. I just wanted to share that with you.
You can buy a can of live crab. Live crab.
A can of live crab?
Yes, you can buy a can of live crab. It might be sitting on a shelf for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. It doesn't matter. But when they take this live crab and they put it in the can, before they seal the can, they fill it with nitrogen. Not liquid nitrogen, but just nitrous oxide or whatever. Just
gaseous nitrogen.
It puts the crab in a state of suspended animation. And the crab is just not dead. He's not alive. He's just kind of nothing. And then as soon as you open the can, the crab pops out and crawls away. And I don't know how long this crab can actually survive in this state and then actually come back to life. It might be limited to 6 months or something, but this is something that you can buy in Japan. A live crab in a can, like a can the size of a can of tuna.
Creepy.
Yeah. And oranges, by the way, oranges in California and oranges in Florida, they're actually orange. But the oranges in the rest of the world are green, dark green. So if you buy oranges, like I see big like trays of oranges on the street, and they're not orange, they're green.
Huh.
But if they get put into a sealed container, they will eventually turn orange because the gases that they produce will overripen them.
And the same goes for tomatoes. The tomatoes that they pick that are vine ripened tomatoes only have to have an orange spot on them the size of a nickel to be picked, and then they are forced via gas to finish turning red, and that's why
not right away.
No,
they're prevented by gas from ripening any further until they get about 12 days from their destination.
Yep.
And then they change the gas to a gas that will turn them red.
And that's why you can get a tomato that is bright red and hard as a rock.
Yeah.
So
Is that healthy?
I don't know. Fried green tomatoes are pretty good. So about this conversation that we're having this evening, what we're pretty much talking about, and we've been talking about for the last hour and a half, has just been we make a big deal in this country, in this world we live in, about drugs, alcohol, recreational drugs specifically, and I've made myself pretty clear on this show, and I think we all have had conversations related to the consumption of alcohol versus the use of drugs, different kinds of drugs. And I was listening to a show recently about MDMA. And way back when MDMA was being researched, not that long ago, it was like the 1970s, I think. The dude that was researching it was taking small amounts and keeping a journal. And in that journal, he would, write journal entries. I took, 10 milligrams of this substance, and this was the effect that I had. Then I took 15, then 20, then 40, then, up, and realized that in small doses, the experience that he had was actually very mild and made him not, I wouldn't say lose his inhibitions, where he became reckless or irresponsible, but in a social setting made him more social and less closed off, and he kind of considered himself an introvert. And when he took a small dose of this MDMA and realized there was potential here for trying to treat things like, I'm sorry? Shyness, but then to the further extreme, people that maybe have had a trauma in their life, so agoraphobia and people that are afraid of other being around other people, especially large groups of other people. And then, of course, people get a hold of this stuff. They start messing around with it. They start using it in larger quantities or abusing it or whatever, and it becomes this recreational drug. But at the same time, we then, through our scheduling that we love so much, that we talk about on this show often, we schedule it something awful. We call it something that has zero medical benefit, and we make it illegal. But at the same time, Chaz pulls up these staggering numbers of death by pharmaceutical, and these drugs are completely legal, prescribed by the doctors that are supposed to be saving us, and are still being abused by the people that are being prescribed these drugs. So I'm no Ron Paul that says legalize all drugs all the time and the world will be a wonderful place. However, I'd like to spend the next little while, if you guys would care to follow me down this rabbit hole. Who of you are familiar with the country of, I believe, no, it's not. What is the country right next to Spain?
Portugal.
Portugal. I was going to say Paraguay. Portugal. Paraguay's in South America. So in the country of Portugal, they had a massive problem with, I want to say it was heroin. Was it heroin?
Yeah, I remember you talking about this.
So
Spain does too.
A huge heroin problem in Portugal. So the Portuguese prime minister or president or whatever they have decided that there was so much crime and so much bullshit going on around this black market with heroin, killing all these people. The drugs were stepped on and dirty and uncontrolled, and people were getting thrown in prison, and their prisons were getting overpopulated, and it wasn't solving any problems, just like we've done here in the United States for the last 40 years. War on drugs. They decided, we're done with this. We're going to make all drugs 100% legal. And Michael Moore, say what you will about Michael Moore, the documentary maker, Michael Moore is in the midst of finishing a documentary that's supposed to be released soon, if not has already been released, that is about this in part. And he is in Portugal and is talking to some Portuguese police officers because he doesn't believe this drugs are legal situation in Portugal. And they're not just legal to use in your own home, and if you get caught with them, you get arrested, and blah blah blah, like pot in some of the states in the U.S. that it's legal. It's just fully legal. You want to use drugs, you're welcome to do so. Obviously, they still have DWI laws, but you can use whatever drugs you want to. And he's talking to these cops and says, hey, if I were to tell you that I had, an ounce of heroin on me right now, what would you do? And the cops look at him and they said, nothing. Tell you to be careful. Like it's legal. So what they saw, the drop in crime, the drop in overdoses, the drop in everything negative related to heroin use in that country dropped significantly. I'm going to look this up real quick.
Take away the taboo and take away the interest.
Do you think so?
Yes, I think so. Same thing in countries like Sweden, where pornography is completely legal, but they don't have a bunch of kids sitting around masturbating all day, trying to get new porn.
Well,
You can, it's like seeing actual penetration sex in a comedy or in a drama or in a romantic film. It's not unusual in some countries. Like, I think it's Sweden. I could be wrong, but they have different laws. You're not allowed to show murder. Anyone can, you can't show someone being killed in a film there. That to them is X-rated. But sex, that's okay. And so there, you don't have, sex crimes. You don't have all the craze and money that people spend on prostitution, and the rape levels are down. They took away the taboo, and it just became a normal thing.
so
But they don't have murder. They don't have a high crime rate because people just don't want to kill anyway. But they don't want to show it in films because that's kind of makes you, but in the U.S., a lot of people numb to the idea. They see murder. We see an average of, I think, 200 murders a month in our media, in movies and TV and news and
in the United States?
In the United States, yeah.
Wow.
But most people have never actually seen anyone die.
Right.
But if they were to see it, they would be like, oh, that's no big deal.
I don't
Or
know
if they
that.
kill
I don't.
someone, they might think, yeah, this is just like, and they might not.
Right.
But it just kind of takes away the sense of wrongdoing when it becomes too common.
So, to talk about this Portuguese situation a little bit, some of the biggest factors, some of the biggest changes that Portugal saw when they decriminalized drugs about 15 years ago was not only the decrease in the crime rate, the incarceration rate, a huge decrease in drug-induced death, they also saw a tremendous decrease in HIV infection rates, which were running rampant in that country when the heroin use got out of control. A significant, just downward spike in the HIV infection rate. And what was interesting was they didn't just make the drugs legal and walk away from it. It was kind of a two-part thing. They handed control of drugs and drug-related things over to the Ministry of Health away from the Justice Department, which then in turn meant that they were going to and have instituted a robust public health model for treating hard drug addiction. So not only have they made the drugs legal, they've also created a program, a government program, that helps treat addicts to get them to stop being addicts, thus decreasing the rate of addiction-related death, overdose, and the revolving door of addiction and desperation.
The people who want to get paid.
Say that again?
I'm assuming that people who want to get clean don't have to pay.
It doesn't say that in here, but I'm assuming if it's Portugal and they're right next door to Spain and right there by Italy, more than likely they have a universal healthcare. They have a single payer healthcare system. So
Right.
I would assume that. So the second part of this was that when it shifted over to the Ministry of Health, it also expanded the welfare system in the form of guaranteed minimum income for people. So changes in the material and health resources for at-risk populations, so the impoverished, the people that were out of work, unemployed, etc., saw not only a decrease in crime, but a decrease in drug use, abuse, and addiction. So they attacked it from multiple angles. And yes, I get it. Portugal is a much smaller country than ours. But at the same time, when we are having to send minor drug offenders out of prison because we're running out of space and we don't have room to incarcerate true hardened criminals because our prisons are filled up with marijuana, users that got busted for having a sack of weed on them, I think the writing's on the wall. That's just an unnecessary cost to society to incarcerate people for having marijuana on them, when we've said on this show numerous times that marijuana is far less dangerous than alcohol.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I just found it really interesting that when we're talking about the medical industry in this country, and I firmly believe that our medical industry, unintentionally, intentionally, I don't care how you look at it, but it's happening. Our medical industry is unfortunately creating drug addicts. I told you the story earlier about the guy being prescribed 180 milligrams a day of oxy. That dude's a drug addict. I told the story months ago about the girl that I saw in an episode of Intervention who was, I don't know if she had MS or what her issue was, I don't remember anymore, but she had this chronic pain and she walked with arm crutches. I mean, she was all twisted up and had been prescribed heavy pain medicine by her doctor, and now her fucking family is staging an intervention to get her clean. It's like, why don't you just talk to her doctor and have her doctor stop prescribing her this ridiculous amount of opioid drugs? That might be a good first step. But we put somebody in the hospital for an injury. My friend, my good, close family friend. His name is Dan. He bought a Harley. He's kind of an idiot. And within a few months of buying this brand new Harley, he managed to get into a gnarly accident. He ended up in the hospital for weeks, if not months. Crazy rehabilitation, broken a dozen bones. I mean, he was in bad shape to the point that, I mean, family flew out to see him. They didn't know if he was going to survive this accident. He did. He's finally home now after months in the hospital. And they had him hopped up on crazy amounts of opioid pain medication. I know from personal experience that if your body gets used to using those drugs, and if you decide that you enjoy the way that that makes you feel, there is a very distinct possibility that this man could have a ticking fucking time bomb inside of his brain right now, where they wean him off, you know, they take him off these heavy drugs, they send him home, but let's say 3 months from now, he's got to get a root canal at the dentist's office. And they prescribe him some Vicodin. And they send him home with the Vicodin, no big deal, right? We'll control your pain in your mouth, here's some Vicodin. But all of a sudden, it triggers something in his brain that says, holy shit, I remember this. That's essentially what happened to me. I was recreationally using these drugs. I stopped. It sucked, but I stopped. Cold turkey, no big deal. Had no real interest in it for years. And then all of a sudden, I end up in the emergency room with a big, fat, fuck-off gash in my arm, 25 stitches on the outside, 5 stitches on the inside to put my tendon back together, and a nice, big, huge shot of morphine in the butt cheek. Not long after that, my wife has surgery. She doesn't like to take pain medication. It makes her sick. She had 2 procedures, and all of a sudden I have a medicine cabinet with a fair amount of Percocet sitting in it. And the rest is history. I was done with the drugs. They gave me the morphine. It triggered something in my brain that said, hello, old friend. I had access to small quantities, and then off to the races. I found access to large quantities. And that's all it took. So it scares the shit out of me that in the midst of this hardcore opioid addiction, a friend of mine has a little baby daughter, young girl, 3 years old, gets diagnosed with some sort of cancer. It was a, what was it? She had some massive tumor, like right in her chest cavity. I don't remember what it was called. And they've got this little girl hopped up on a steady drip of morphine. They do surgery. They remove this huge tumor, and she's in recovery. And they're having to now decide how to get her off of the tremendous amounts of morphine that they had her on for a very extended period of time. You can find reports and videos and testimony of parents who's had sick kids who are having to be weaned off of opioid pain medication in the hospital and the tremendous agony that these little children are going through. They have no clue why they feel this way, and it's because they are completely addicted physically to these drugs. There has to be a better way.
I have a nephew who his mother was a heavy heroin user while she was pregnant. And
Oh.
he was born
Completely addicted to heroin.
completely addicted. And from the time he came out of the womb, he was going through cold turkey.
Right.
And he spent a year of being a child in his crib, and every night he would get on his hands and knees and bang his head against the headboard of his crib.
Yeah.
Because he was in so much pain. And he of course he didn't remember it, but everybody else did.
Sure.
And then when he became a teenager and learned about drugs, and he got his first dose of some opiate, he instantly became addicted from the first time. Yeah, because that is just something that, you know, all it takes is one time, even before you're born. If you have had it in your system, your old friend is going to come back. And now he's in and out of prison. I don't even know if he's still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yep. It's crazy. But here's the question, Chaz. Maybe you're the smartest one on this show.
What?
Is there no way? Let's take.
Wait, Chaz is the smartest. I resemble that remark.
Yeah.
Let's take, for example, all of the advances in neurology, brain science, brain mapping, the kinds of therapies and brain surgeries that we can do now, you know, orthoscopically, crazy shit. A buddy of mine last year who suffered for his entire adult life with these excruciating migraine-like episodes. They opened up the back of his skull and like went in with a red hot poker and zapped something in his fucking brain and relieved whatever it was that was causing this. Why have we not?
Shit, Robinson.
See, I mute him when we're not hearing him, because I just slide his slider down because the background noise in Vietnam is tremendous.
Yeah. Okay, so start your question again.
All right. So my friend had a red hot poker shoved in the back of his head by a doctor, solved his problem, fixed his issue. Have we not progressed as a human race with science and, you know, sending Matt Damon to Mars to grow potatoes, that we haven't figured out a way to trace parts of the brain, to stimulate a part of the brain, to alleviate? I mean, my wife had knee surgery, and the first time she had knee surgery, they put her under general anesthesia. And she fucking hates general anesthesia. So the second time she had the same knee worked on, they basically gave her a spinal, similar to what she had when she had a C-section, where it just numbs the body, right? They go into a nerve or something, and they do something magical, and they stick something in there, and it blocks all the nerves. Have we not figured out a way that instead of pumping a 4-year-old girl full of morphine to ease the pain, that we truly don't have a way of targeting somewhere in the body or the brain that could have taken the place of essentially turning his nephew into a drug addict, and this little girl into a potential drug addict, and my friend Dan from the motorcycle accident into a potential drug addict in the future. Does that not exist? Is that not a thing? Why is that not a thing?
I would say because it's not as profitable.
Really? So you're the cynic now.
Oh, I mean, the fact that you can stimulate parts of the brain and have it, or just the spinal cord, the central nervous system in general, and have it react to different bodies. In other words, you just have to stick something. It's basically like acupuncture almost in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, they just put little needles in your fucking ear, and the pain in your knee goes away or something like that.
Or how about some of these prosthetics that you can now control by thinking, hey, I want my robotic hand to pick up that glass, because they've tapped into, you put a little helmet on. There's this helicopter. You can literally buy this little helicopter now from the internet, where you put on a little hat and you can make the helicopter go up and go down by thinking about it.
Oh, that's creepy.
It uses brainwaves, right? We have mapped the brain so well that I'm to believe that the only way to relieve my cousin's pain from his motorcycle accident was to pump him full of OxyContin or morphine. And I just have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, pretty cynical about this one. It's not profitable. It's not a way to, it basically takes away a potential customer for life. It does.
Right,
and
because at this point, you have these pain clinics, right? You have pain management places that their whole reason for existing is taking somebody who has fibromyalgia, and I'm going to give you a bunch of narcotic pain medicine for the rest of your fucking life, instead of, like you said, targeting whatever's causing the pain, wherever's causing the pain, and essentially, let's do what my buddy did. Let's take a red hot poker and zap your brain, and now he's fine.
Yeah.
And the recovery time was like 5 days.
I mean, that's why, go ahead.
You're right. It's about the industry again. When in the 70s, my father worked for one of the big tire companies. I think Goodyear or Goodrich or something like that. And there was someone who came up with tire. He invented a tire. He wasn't a tire manufacturer. He was just a guy who studied a lot about rubbers, and he invented a tire that you would never have to replace. The tread would never wear out, and it had great grip. And Goodyear bought his patent and put it on a shelf or put it in vault, because they go out of business if they couldn't sell more tires. That's you can't eliminate your clients.
So they bought him.
So the same goes for
the drug industry.
Nikola Tesla coming up with a way to provide wireless power to the entire world for free.
For free, yes.
But he gets shut out because they rather go with a way that has a monthly bill involved.
Yeah.
Or
well, that's the bottom line, really.
All we need is a rogue nation to just, some mad dictator or scientist just totally take advantage of that kind of technology and say, okay, hey, look, I'm powering my entire country for free.
Well, I mean, Germany, Switzerland, there are countries in Europe that the government paid to install solar panels on all the houses, and now they've basically gotten away from burning fossil fuels to power almost the entire country. I mean, it's doable. We live in the valley of the sun, and yet it would cost me, out of my pocket, $20,000 to put solar panels on my roof that could power almost my entire house for
The electric
forever.
company doesn't allow it.
Well, and the worst part is that now with these Tesla battery packs that you can buy for your house, so you get some solar panels, you buy this battery pack, it charges this battery, it creates enough energy to run your house off of. There are people that have spent the money to buy these battery packs who are essentially off the grid. They're trying to pass legislation in the state of California that says you will have to pay taxes to be off the grid. It is now going to cost you money
No.
to not be part of the municipal power grid, which completely defeats the purpose.
Right.
And in some states, it's cool because if you have some, power generation, whether it's, solar panels or a wind turbine or something like that, and you have it connected to your main power system in your home, and let's say you're in negative usage, where you're actually generating more power than you're using, there are some states and communities and counties and cities that actually pay you for generating power that others can use. To me, that's the right way to do it. You don't penalize the person that doesn't want to connect to your grid. That's ridiculous.
I always, ever since gyms have been around, exercise equipment has been around, I've always wondered why people aren't hooking generators up to this exercise equipment so people who are getting healthy can generate power for the city.
That'd be awesome.
Right? You hook a treadmill or a stationary bike up. I mean, that is a
kinetic
power
reactor.
Absolutely. You are turning a wheel that can easily turn a piston and create energy. Period.
Yes. And getting healthy.
And there are people that have set up systems like that where, hey, you're a lazy piece of shit. You want to watch an hour of television? You are going to pedal this bike to turn on that TV.
Yeah.
And
that's a good idea. I like that.
I love that idea. All of these gyms with all these, people paying money to the gym to get healthy and, instead of just running down the street, fine. Then you are going to help generate electricity for the greater good. And, I would love to put solar panels on my roof. I would love to put panels on my roof that would eliminate I have mostly gas in my house. My water heater's gas, my dryer's gas. I have my furnace is gas. So I would love to offset my electrical usage, especially in the summer, with some solar panels. I'd love to be able to heat my pool in the cold season with some solar panels, but it's just not cost effective.
So how many hamsters would you have to buy with hamster wheels?
Dude, I have 7 dogs. I could just have those fuckers running on a wheel.
Yeah. All day.
All day long. And I have enough power to run this computer and do this radio show. But our wonderful Governor Ducey would not allow me to do so.
I'm going to have to sign off early, guys.
Well, we're almost done anyway.
We're done, yeah.
We're about there. So, Robinson, thank you for joining us and making us feel like we have vertigo watching you walk around the city. We definitely enjoyed the scooter ride that we got to watch. That was cool.
It was a great intro.
All right, sir. Any parting words?
Yes. As always, remember, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice.
Pain
That's all I have.
Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. All right, sir.
In the words of Dalai Lama.
The Dalai Lama. Not to be confused with the Dalai alpaca.
Or not to be confused with the Salvador Dali Lama.
Right. All right, good sir. Have a good night.
Talk to you next week.
See ya. All right, Chaz.
Yep.
Let's rip this shit open. We have 3 minutes remaining. I'm going to get the bumper music started. I think this was a good conversation. And I think we tend to do a pretty good job kind of always circling it back to the reason that we do this show. You know, we don't always do a great job. Sometimes we get off on tangents. Sometimes we don't make a ton of sense. But I think it was a good topic. Thank you for finding it. Thank you for bringing it to my attention.
You're welcome.
Next week, we'll have to find something. I want to find something upbeat to talk about next week. I want to find something kind of almost exciting to talk about. I don't have any ideas. I don't know what I mean by that. I just want to find something, whether it's a little bit humorous or a little bit weird or a little bit strange, and talk about something. It's been a little while since we've had a strange episode. And our friend of the show, Eric, remember Eric?
I believe so.
The recovering alcoholic. He did an interview from his couch.
Yeah.
He will be celebrating his 1 year sobriety anniversary in March. And he asked if he could come back on the show to talk about his first full year in recovery. And I said, abso-freaking-lutely. Awesome. We would love to. And I don't think he really asked. It was because we basically offered when he was on the show that we would have him back for his 1 year.
Yeah.
So we will absolutely have him back. That is coming up in the future. Tomorrow could be a very interesting day, Chaz.
I've heard.
So maybe I will have some stories to tell about what happens tomorrow. Let me just give you a little teaser. I've mentioned our family friend on this show, someone that you know, someone that I know, very close friend of my family, who has been struggling with an alcohol problem, kind of back and forth. And it's kind of come to a head recently where our entire family is very worried about him. And everybody's getting together tomorrow for a birthday. Not his birthday, but a birthday, family member birthday. And a decision has been reached by the matriarch of the family that it is time to confront him about this. I don't want to say intervention, because that's not what this would be, but more or less a potentially uncomfortable conversation. And being the only person in the room with any experience around recovery and addiction and alcoholism, I know that I will be leaned on heavily to help make sure that this conversation doesn't fly off the rails and turn into something very negative. So, to all of our listeners, to all of our viewers, please send your good thoughts, your prayers, your vibes, your juju this way for what could be a very difficult conversation tomorrow. And I will report back on the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast next week. What happened, if anything, tomorrow. So, this is the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. This is the end of our broadcast day. It was a good show, Chaz. Thank you so much.
Good show.
Absolutely.
Anytime, man.
We can be reached via Twitter at Sober Happy Hour, on Facebook.com/Sober Happy Hour. Download, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast application anywhere. Listen to us on RadioValencia.fm or on Radio Valencia's actual radio station, 87.9 FM in the San Francisco Bay Area. We come to you live every Saturday night around 10 o'clock on YouTube and streaming on Radio Valencia the following Saturday. So please don't call in when you're listening to us on Radio Valencia, because we're not really there. You're listening to last week's show. But download, subscribe to the podcast, leave us comments, ratings, reviews, and subscribe to YouTube. Push the little button. Push it right there. It's good. It's good for you, I promise. Tell your friends, and if you want to donate, cash.me/$SHHRP, or from the Cash app on any platform, hashtag SHHRP. Donate something. Your mother will thank you. That's all for us. And if
All
you or
right.
yours is considering getting sober, I highly recommend it. Good night.
night.
See you next week.
Later.